Files. My name is Tess and this is my channel where I explore how I am transforming from a physiotherapist to a med student and hopefully a future doctor. So I have some very exciting guests with me today. These are two of my favourite med friends. I've got Winsome and Mac with me today. Say hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi. We're feeling a bit awkward because this is our first time filming, but I am so grateful to these guys to coming and spending some time with me today because we've had so many questions from all of you about how we have managed to get here and how we've passed the dreaded GAMSAT. And I guess we've all talked a lot at uni about the times that we spent studying for the GAMSAT, and we thought, why not get together and make a bit of a video to help all of you hopefully pass the test and get into med school. So as a bit of an introduction, I thought I might have these guys tell you a little bit more about their backgrounds and how they came to be in med school. So Winsome, would you like to maybe just give us a little bit of a brief rundown as to your background and what made you decide to pursue a career in medicine?
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm an art student. I kind of studied art history and fell a bit out of love with the arts, and it took me a couple of years to, I guess, make the decision and then kind of going through the whole GAMSAT process, and then ended up here because they accept non-science students.
They do, hurrah, which is lucky for us because
yeah.
I love having Winsome's like art history background, especially when it comes to some of our subjects, which surprisingly do have some art in them. And Mac, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to med school?
I'm more of a classic science person. I did a science degree looking at environmental microbiology, and I always kind of wanted to do stuff with the environment. And then kind of got out of school, wasn't able to actually get a job in that field, started working in a medical science lab and kind of being in that space and realizing that if I was gonna be in the medical science space, I probably wanted to be actually more hands-on working with people.
Mm-hmm. How does that work? Because is it completely separate?
Yeah, they're really separate skills.
Right.
So
yeah,
like you'll be in the lab all day as a scientist.
Right.
And like you're working towards things that will help lots and lots of people. So like you can feel like, okay, I'm making a big change.
Yeah.
But you don't actually get like the feedback every day
right.
of like helping people.
Yeah, right.
Like patient contact sort of thing.
Yeah, and just learning about people's stories and like their unique lives. Like you're just looking at them as like biochemical machines and not thinking at all about like who they are as people.
Yeah.
So I feel like most of the med degree treats them as biochemical machines.
Yeah, that is actually
that's right,
very true. Yeah.
And then at the end they're like, oh wait, you've got to go and speak to a patient now.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, they're human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
very cool.
Yeah, and then the same, it took like a few years to kind of go through the process of working out how to get in.
Yeah. And did you use the GAMSAT just the one time, is that right?
Yeah, in 2018.
Yeah, and Winsome, how many times
have
have
you
you
sat? Twice.
Twice? Yeah. And I sat 3 times. So we've got a bit of a varied range of experiences. And I guess a quick background on me, if you haven't been here before, I'm a physio, so my background is technically science, but I did have 7 years out of studying before I came back as well. So I had a little bit of a struggle town with the GAMSAT myself personally, and it took me a couple of tries to get into. So yeah, we're all pretty diverse. So hopefully we'll be able to give you guys some good advice. Fingers crossed. At least some varied advice, right?
At least some advice.
Some
Yes.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Section 1. So section 1 was one of my strongest sections. What about you guys?
It was my strongest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was one of my strongest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. And so did you actually do some study for section 1, or did you kind of just like wing it on the day?
Yeah, it was more winging it. Like I did all the practice exams, and the one thing that I got out of it that I found I got better at doing was just like really reading the question and figuring out exactly what they're looking for, and then going back and finding the part in the passage and kind of just tunnel vision looking for that one thing.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of them were set up to kind of sway you in one direction or another. So yeah, I just found that useful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually did a similar thing where I would read the question before I read the stimulus, so that as I was reading the stimulus for the first time, I knew like what I was going to be looking for, and then I would get quite specific with what I was doing. What about you, Mac?
I think, yeah, I did all of the practice questions I could for section 1. And from the start, I knew that that was probably going to be my most comfortable section.
Yeah.
And like I actually kind of, in a perverse way, like enjoyed the practice questions.
Yeah.
the one thing that changed is like as you go through, you're like you have like an instinctive first answer that you kind of think is right.
Yeah.
And I always kind of thought, okay, I should just go with that instinct.
Yeah.
But then as I would do lots of practice questions, I worked out that often that wasn't quite right. And like what you were saying, you have to like really dig deep. You can't just like go on feeling, and like it was worth switching answers sometimes.
Yeah, like I think it's set up to give you this first impression, but the actual question is asking you something different.
Definitely.
And like I'm curious about where you guys sort of sat, because everyone says don't go back and change your answers.
Yeah.
And even in our most recent exam, I went back and changed a bunch of answers.
Yeah.
But did you find you had to go back and reevaluate?
I think for me, for the first section, I didn't.
Right.
Probably because if I was going to change my answer, that probably meant rereading the passage, which I didn't have time to do. But in the third section, in the science section, I absolutely did. And that maybe reflects that I was a bit more unsure with that section.
Right.
But yeah, I think that the first instinct thing is really interesting, because I think a lot of the time we get told to like go on gut feel for our for exams, but for I think for section 1 in particular, they'll often ask you a word, like a particular phrase, it'll have a word in it, and that same word might be in the passage, but that's actually the incorrect answer. So they're actually trying to like confuse you with that, because you might be like really tired, it's the end of the 75 minutes and you've read one question, you recognize that a word was in the passage and you're like, that must be the answer, and it's not necessarily, you have to think a little bit more into it. Yeah, and like you say with timing, I think part of the skill was just kind of smashing it out, going through and not stopping for any reason, and just if you want to go back and spend more time later, kind of marking it.
That's what I did. I would just like put a big circle around ones I wanted to go back to. And I had enough time to like go through the whole thing and then do all of the circled ones again.
Oh, that's good.
And I changed a whole heap of answers.
Okay,
and
so you must have been
pretty well for me.
You must have been quite fast with your reading then, because I feel like I kind of got through and maybe had like a couple of minutes to spare but didn't have.
I went to the bathroom as well. I think I'm quite a fast reader.
Okay,
I think that's my
definitely.
The section 1 I feel is actually mostly a test of how fast you can read.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
And,
I almost feel like training to read faster would potentially be a valid thing to do if you were struggling with section 1.
Yeah, possibly.
There's actually like kind of speed reading techniques that you can do. Because like some of these passages are like a whole page.
Right. And
so you would always read the whole thing?
I would always read the whole thing.
Yeah, me too actually. Did you not?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Full disclosure, the only memory I have of like the first test is of lunchtime. So I think I have some sort of like PTSD or something. But
I think many people would be feeling the same.
I don't have that many like specific details from the day.
You're just not encoding or something.
Or you're just like in fight or flight, where you're just like so much adrenaline and you're just trying to get it done. So
isn't your amygdala supposed to help you remember things when you're having like when you're scared?
Yeah, that's true actually. But maybe it's not scared per se. Maybe it's just fatigue. I remember feeling extremely fatigued at the end of the day.
It's a long test.
So did you actually employ any of the speed reading techniques, or you're just naturally a fast reader?
I think I've just kind of naturally a fast reader. I think
okay.
Just from reading a lot.
And how did you guys go with like the old English and those sorts of passages? Because I found those to be quite tricky, particularly like the poetry and that sort of thing, where I sometimes didn't understand particular words that were in the passage. Did you have encountered that at all?
Well, I guess I sort of went through a lot of practice questions and just looked up any words I didn't know and kind of made an effort to sort of go back and read them again. But other than that, I think it was just focusing on reading a bit faster and not getting hung up on words that I didn't understand. Because sometimes you can sort of figure out what they mean from the context.
No, I think that's an important point.
It would be hard to kind of get your vocabulary up to scratch if you kind of weren't already there. But one thing that I did that I think helped is like I read all my books on my Kindle, and there's this setting where you can just like highlight a word and then it tells you the definition. So you know when you're going through a book and you're kind of like, I kind of know what that word means, like I'll infer it from context and move on. But like I was making a purposeful effort in like the year leading up to the GAMSAT to like look at all the words that I was kind of shaky about.
That's a good way to do it.
I think that like helped a little bit, but like who knows what words are going to come up.
Well, exactly. But I agree. I did that in a very less tech savvy way and turned into just like writing it down and coming back to it later.
Oh, nice.
And I
this
also
is the lazy way.
But we were saying before, I definitely did the typical read the newspaper. Those sorts of things. And apparently that's like these guys did not do that.
Oh no, I did.
You did?
Wait, I was reading the conversation like all the time. But that was more for essays.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think as well, like reading the paper, or basically reading anything is good to kind of up your vocabulary and up your reading speed and like your ability to like process, because I think we think, oh yeah, I'm well read, I've read a lot of novels in my time, I'm going to be able to read through this, but it's like you're not necessarily reading in an analytical way when you're like reading a fictional novel or something. And so it's like that ability to look at a piece of writing and look at it critically is, I think, a specific technique, not just for the GAMSAT, but if you haven't done it for a while, then it's good to practice looking at things a bit more critically, maybe.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so like in terms of the preparation, you guys mentioned practice tests. Is there any like material or specific preparation things you would recommend to people?
Well, I used the MediRed series, which was like $300, and you kind of got a kit that had a book on each section, and it sort of gave you a passage and asked you a bunch of questions, and I think it had a few exercises and things, which I didn't really do for the first section, but I found it was just useful to have this kind of guide to what the GAMSAT would be. But I guess other than that, I didn't really, but that was mostly for the science anyway.
Okay, so for section 1, not really. What about you for section 1 specifically?
I did all the Des O'Neill questions, and I found them like pretty similar to the GAMSAT. Like, I think you can't go too wrong for question 1, practice questions, section 1.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had the Des O'Neill, and I followed the book all the way through, and it kind of, we were talking about before, there has like a little, they kind of sample each block of the types of questions you could expect in section 1, and then they like actually have you do a little practice test, and then you mark it, and it tells you where your weak like areas are of like things that you're struggling with.
I did that, and it was kind of even across the board.
Oh, okay. Well,
and I was like,
useless.
Yeah. It's because you were like acing it already. I, on the other hand, was like groveling and needing to like get all these extra points. So but I definitely had areas that were much more difficult, and it tended to be, like I said, things that were poetry was a bit more tricky for me than say like
does it separate
long passages
by kind of stimulus?
Yeah, or by like thinking required.
Yeah, it was, so like analysis versus inference versus stuff like that. Not so much a specific text type.
No.
Yeah, because I guess the thing that they really sort of get you to focus on is all the information is really on the page. You just have to figure out how to kind of extract it.
Yeah, and like what they're specifically asking you for. Yeah, for each question. Cool. Okay, is there any, I think that's probably, we've covered section 1 pretty well. Do you guys have any closing remarks, any extra little tidbits you want to tell the people?
Just like enjoy it. It's actually pretty good, like compared to the rest. It's like the most enjoyable one.
I did feel a bit like it was going back to primary school and doing reading comprehension.
Yeah. But like on steroids.
Exactly.
Like a whole lot more pressure.
And I was just a little bit proud about how far I'd come.
Yes, that's true actually. From when you were in grade 1 or like I can read now.
I know, it's exciting.
Oh well, I'm actually really keen for us to discuss section 2, because section 1 was okay for me, but section 2 was what I really enjoyed studying for. Okay, so we think we might tie it up there, because I think that actually turned into a bit of a longer discussion than I was expecting. We had heaps of like info for all of you. So we're gonna tap out there and tune in for our next video, where we're going to be talking about section 2 of the GAMSAT. Alright, we'll see you next time. Bye!